Welcome back. This is your host, Dean Van Dyke, with From Battle to Business. And today I am excited to have John Pethke on, a former Air Force military veteran who has developed a dating app for introverts. Welcome, John.
Hi, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. When you reached out, it really intrigued me to learn more about this, being an introvert myself, although I've been married for 30 years, so I won't be partaking of the app. But in 60 seconds or less, just tell us who John is.
Yeah, Air Force veteran. Currently work a day job as an internal auditor for American Family Insurance, getting my master's in sustainable management through UW Oshkosh. I've lived my whole life in Wisconsin, and I made this app trying to get it off its feet and let people know about it.
Nice. Well, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'm going to let you pronounce it first. I
Sure,
think
sure.
I've got the pronunciation correct, but I'll let you pronounce it. And then just give us a little bit of background about how you got to this point. And yeah, let's start there.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, the app is called CoyAmore, and that's CoyAmore. Yeah, and I'd say at the beginning of 2022, I was in a comfortable place in life. Didn't really have I just felt kind of stagnant, almost bored, and that's kind of why I felt comfortable, going into this. But yeah, I'd found that amongst the dating app populations, there's the main ones out there. And then I see a lot of like kind of specialized ones and niche ones. And I found that there wasn't really anything like strongly catering to introverts, which is like a pretty significant population. So I thought I'd take a shot at it. And, it's been a very rewarding experience in a lot of different ways. I'd never started a business before, so the amount I've learned in the last 2 years has been, awesome. And yeah, we released the app in May of this year, and we're in like the hundreds of users at this point. I just hired a marketing manager, so I'm hoping with her on board, we'll be able to onboard a lot more people going forward.
Nice. So you mentioned kind of the dating app marketplace. It sounds like there's actually other niches out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's all sorts of them. I mean, like I said, there's the main ones that everyone's familiar with, and they all have their like slogan and little differences. But
Hmm.
in order to be successful in the dating industry, like making a new app, you kind of have to have a niche at this point. Otherwise, there's no like strong benefit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So being an introvert, which sometimes I wonder if I actually am, because I love speaking in front of people. Most introverts don't like that. So when you think about an introvert, and I'll admit, networking events are somewhat painful.
Yeah,
So tell me a little bit about how you thought you zeroed in on the introvert aspect of it. What led
yeah.
you to that kind of that aha moment?
Yeah, and I definitely relate to like as an introvert myself, going on these podcasts, a little easier, it's one-on-one typically, it's
Mhm.
less, and networking events are a lot. I had three last week, and I actually like had one on Monday and I skipped it because I was just like socially exhausted.
Sure.
And I have another two this week that I still have to go to. So I totally get that. But yeah, how I honed in on it, I guess, from my own self, I'm an introvert. I have a lot of friends who are introverts, so
Hmm.
I kind of take it at that. And branding that was kind of difficult to figure out, right? Because introverts are often looked at as like they get like a bad rep, and there's like a lot of stigmas behind that.
Uh-huh.
So, like saying, all introverts are shy, it's not necessarily true. So branding it was difficult because I wanted to figure out how to represent them in our branding, but in a way that was like it still represents them, but not in a way that is offensive to them. So
Sure.
like some of it was simple, like our color scheme is like different shades of blue, which is like a calming effect for a lot of people. Other dating apps I've seen don't use that color in any capacity, so we kind of like
Oh,
taken that as our like, introverts are internal, blue is kind of calming. It kind of goes with that. Another thing was like the name. Figuring that out was kind of difficult because for a bunch of different reasons. But the name is, coy, which is synonymous with shy. Not that we want to say all introverts are shy, but it's synonymous and I think close enough that people get it. And then
Mhm.
amore is Italian for love, so shy love. And then
Nice. I
our
love
logo,
the.
yeah, our logo is that one was took a lot more time. Initially we had like a heart made out of a bunch of puzzle pieces, and I I didn't know that like the universal symbol for like autism awareness was a blue puzzle piece. So
Oh,
we had to like rebrand because that was just like not, I didn't know that was a thing, and somebody commented on that. So we had to rebrand that, and that was it took me a bit to figure out what I wanted. So what we landed on was a heart within a like thought bubble, as opposed, which is, like it's introverted because a thought bubble would be introverted, and a extroverted symbol on the opposite end would be like a chat bubble, right? Because
hmm.
introverts are more internal, whereas extroverts are more external. So that's kind of how we branded our logo. And then going into the app, we wanted to one, it's if we advertise as the dating app for introverts, ideally people recognize that kind of like a if you build it, they will come scenario, hopefully.
Hmm.
And then past that, we want to put features in there that, cater to them in ways other apps aren't catering to them. So one of our one noteworthy example of that is our blind date feature. So when two users match and start chatting, there's a toggle option in the app. And when one user toggles it on, it lets the app know that they want to go on a date with the other person they're chatting with. But it
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
let the other user know until that user also toggles it on. And then the app will let them both know that they want to go on a date with each other. So it kind of takes away the fear of asking each other out.
Oh, nice.
So those
Nice.
are the kind of things that we want to incorporate going forward as well.
I love the color scheme because a lot of, I just actually went through reviewing the psychology of colors and was working on some graphics and for some social assets I'm having created. And it was, the different blues, the different, using gold, as you can see in my podcast logo. So that's interesting that you went through that same exercise. The name, CoyAmore, I mean, shy love, that I mean makes total sense. So one of the things you said earlier though was is you had never started a business, you've learned a lot. What would you say is your top three things you've learned from starting and running a business since you launched?
It's a good question. Probably in general, the like phases of what to consider in a small business, like marketing, accounting.
Mhm.
Not to say like I know all accounting aspects or all marketing aspects, but I now understand what you have to plan for to start a business, funding, like all of the basics essentially. And that may not be that, I'd say that's just like one important, it's a lot of things, but as far as I would say is one thing. Secondly, networking. My one of my mentors always says if you're not networking, you're not working. So I'd say networking goes a long way. I can't tell you how many times I've met someone through networking that has led me to a new resource that was highly beneficial. And then I'd say thirdly is research. I've always done a lot of research through school, but
Mhm.
it was more so like to complete an assignment. I
Right.
actually got to apply it here in a lot of different ways. Some research led me to ideas that I can incorporate into the app or the website.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd say, research, market or networking, and the basic ins and outs of starting a small business.
Yeah, it's interesting how I launched my business 6 years ago. I was just doing the math, and you really don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And you get into it, and for like example, yesterday I was in a networking event, and I learned that there's a new federal government reporting requirement related to money laundering, and I'm
Hmm.
like, what in the world is this? Right. So, and I guess there's a hefty fine tied to it if you
Hmm.
don't do it. So networking is great. I will still say it's painful at times, but
Oh yeah.
um, it is. I know I agree. I mean, you're the people you meet, what learning from them. I mean, is great. So when you think about creating an app, like what's been the big challenge with creating that app? Because everybody's got apps on their phones, but you don't really know what the nuts and bolts are behind it.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of challenges with it. I mean, especially as someone who doesn't have a tech background, I've still learned a lot from it. But yeah, I would say, one being if you don't have a tech background, deciding who you want to develop it. There's so many options out there, and everyone is a salesman. So weeding through that to find the right fit is tough. I think the only advice I could provide to anyone else is, interview as many as possible until you find, something that just sits right with you. Past that, patience is a huge factor, especially again, as someone who doesn't have a tech background. I got to help out a lot during the design aspect to it because I had the idea and that was like highly beneficial and rewarding. But once you figure out the design, you're stuck in a waiting period where you have to wait for it to be developed and
Oh,
finished.
sure.
There's only so much you can do during that time. And I shouldn't say that. There's plenty to do outside of that, but when you're
Hmm.
waiting for like the thing to come out, that's it can be a long wait sometimes. So yeah,
Sure.
patience too. Yeah.
What so you talked about doing a lot of interviews. How did you do that and what was your selection criteria?
Yeah, I don't know if I the criteria was a lot of feeling based. Past that, uh
Uh,
financial based, but I would
okay.
say, I actually started by reaching out to a local company where it's one guy who has his own company and does like
Okay.
small development. And I kind of asked had if he had any interest there or if he would be the right fit. And we had a meeting and he's like, you probably don't want to be looking for just one person to develop it. And like he gave me
Oh,
like a lot of good general like feedback about what I should be looking for, which was helpful. So you can, there's like companies where it's just one person or maybe a couple people, then there's medium-sized companies, and then there's
mhm.
like huge companies. And so I would say, just kind of interview as many medium to big size companies as you can. And, they'll typically offer like a free estimate and kind of go over whatever details you want from that. But it was really just like Googling, software development companies. There's so many out there.
There
It's
are. There's
overwhelming.
Yeah, there are a ton for sure. So when you were creating the app, one of the key things, that you was really catering to introverts, right? So when you were creating it, what were some of the challenges that you ran into as it was being developed?
I'd say the rebranding we had to do for sure. The name also had to be rebranded. Our parent company name is Introvoo LLC, and that's what I wanted the app name to be. But or trademark reasons, that wasn't really going to work. So
Oh,
we had to try and find a different name. But past that, I'd say this sounds like it's a pretty typical thing, but the deadline to create an app, or like if they give a deadline, it's almost always going to be completely different from that. From what I understand. I've talked to a lot of people who've made apps up till now, and I've never heard of anyone meeting a deadline they created. So, cater that expectation if they do give you a deadline. I think we were like 6 or 7 months past what they initially,
wow.
quoted, which and still we got it done in a year. So that I just didn't know what to expect.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, it was still good. I'd say during the development phase, those would have been like the biggest issues. I honestly, the development was pretty fluid from what I could recognize. Getting testers is a good thing to do. Get as many as you can, and that's something I did during that like development phase is I reached out to a lot of people to try and get like a list of individuals that would want to test the app for when it does come out. And then, once it came out, I emailed everyone and was like, hey, let me know your feedback and everything. And we just tried to break it as much as possible to find the bugs and everything. So,
That's always a challenge trying to break it. I
yeah,
mean, trying to get people to, you know, do some things that aren't typical. But so one of the things that's kind of been on my mind as we've been talking is I know it's for introverts, but there's a lot of extroverts out there as well. So is
yeah.
the app compatible or with extroverts, or is
Yeah,
it only
absolutely. I mean,
okay?
opposites attract, and often enough, introverts and extroverts pair well together. So it's encouraged for extroverts if they feel like their match is an introvert to hop on the app. We want to make connections here.
Hmm.
We're catering to a group that isn't really being catered to. That's the difference.
And that's a great definition of a niche. Um, so where are you taking it? Where I mean, where does your roadmap lead you over the next 6 to 18 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as marketing goes, I've been trying, to figure it out myself for a while, and I can't. There's only so much I can do. So
Mhm.
I did hire someone to be my marketing manager who has their own like marketing company. So she starts in December, but she's helping with me a bunch of other stuff ahead of that. So I'd say, I'm hoping with her on board, we'll be able to make a push to gain more followers. Our
Mhm.
user base is heavily on the male side right now, which is actually pretty typical for most dating apps in general. It's usually there's a pretty big skewed amount, but in general, we want to try and spread awareness. And I'm hoping with her, we should be able to. She's pretty confident. She feels she can, get a get the user base going. So we're going to start regionally and then expand out. But the app is in the United States completely. So
Okay.
there's I'd say half our user base right now is out of California too. So I see users all over the place on there.
Nice. Well, congratulations. So one of the hardest questions you're ever going to answer on a podcast is probably the next one. So what three books would you recommend to my audience and why?
I read like more fantasy type stuff, not
Those qualify. I've had those. I
okay,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Everworld is a great series, like I said, completely fantasy based, but that's probably the only recent series I've gone through. Otherwise, yeah, I don't and I mostly read like when I'm on vacation. Like I'll read on the plane or something like that. But
Yeah.
I cannot say that I have a large I read a lot for school too, but those are all college textbooks and stuff,
Oh, sure.
so it's a bit different there.
No, absolutely. And so
That is a
no
hard
worries at all.
question. I'm sure a lot of people would have a lot easier time answering that if they read more. I'm just,
Not
you know,
always. Even those that read a lot, they have trouble, thinking through their library and saying,
I'm
"Oh, these are
surprised. I
my
because
top
like
three."
I watch like for my relaxation, I work all day and I for my relaxation I'll watch like a movie or TV or
Hmm.
something. So if you were to ask me that question in the form of like TV or movies, I feel like I'd have a pretty easy time answering that. But
Great. What are your top three movies? Don't open up a question for me like
yeah,
that.
yeah, I did
That's
put
that's too
myself in that
easy.
position. Yeah, I suppose I did. Yeah, I'd say top one, Donnie Darko, two, Silver Linings Playbook, and three would be Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Nice. It's interesting. I actually had that in my question bank, and I would ask that question, and there would be a lot of blank stares.
Really?
And yeah, and so I just switched to books. And so,
Huh.
but it's interesting because I've had other people respond with, well, my books are fantasy mostly. That's what I'm into, and I'm like, that's
Yeah,
perfectly fine. It's a book, and
sure. Yeah.
so it's interesting that I mean you rattled off those movies pretty quick. So
I am a big movie buff. Yeah, yeah.
nice, nice. Well, what I'd love to do is give my guests the final word. So I'm going to offer that up to you. You got the final word, and I'll let you take it away.
Oh, thanks, Dean. Yeah, thank you again for having me. CoyAmore is out. We're on all forms of social media. We have a website. We come out with a blog once a week that's supposed to help with dating and tips around introversion and stuff like that. And our app is on both Android and Apple. So if you want to check it out or you know anyone that would fit well, feel free to let them know and we'll appreciate it. While our user base isn't huge right now, we are, pushing for more users. So even if you want to download the app and keep the profile up, you may, run into someone on there at some point. So
Well, that's great. Congratulations on the app. Congratulations on where you're headed. And I greatly appreciate having you on as well. So
yeah,
folks, we'll put that in the show notes of where to find the app and your website. And it was great to have you on the show, John.
yeah. Thanks. It was good being here, Dean.